Welcome to the Good Shepherd and the Child podcast, where we explore the spirituality of the Christian child through the method of the catechesis of the Good Shepherd. I am your host, Carrie Mecki-Lozano. Today we have a real treat for you. We have the article from the 2003 journal called Holy Simplicity, written by Sofia Cavalletti, that I read for you in our episode. And then Anna Hurdle joins us back on the podcast for her and I to discuss the wealth of knowledge and beauty that is in this article. Anna Hurdle is a catechist and a formation leader in all levels of catechesis of the Good Shepherd. She is also a retired elementary Montessori guide and a coordinator of CGS at her home parish in Charlotte, North Carolina. Anna serves the National Association through the Episcopal Committee and the Formation Advisory Council. I hope you enjoy. Holy Simplicity by Sofia Cavalletti. I salute you, Queen Wisdom. May the Lord safeguard you with your holy sister, pure and holy simplicity. So begins St. Francis of Assisi, the praise of virtue, presenting to us a tight relationship between two virtues that at first glance seem quite distant from each other. We instinctively regard a wisdom as something great and perhaps complicated. At any rate, we assume it is the fruit of extensive study and reflection. We might even say that as a virtue, wisdom seems a bit pompous. Simplicity, on the other hand, comes to us naked and defenseless. Without making any pressing demands, she patiently waits for us to grasp the depth of her soul. Simplicity is proper to those things that are so great in themselves as to be able, with a minimum of external elements, to satisfy the one who searches for what is essential for living. And simplicity has a great reward in store for us, that of slowly, gradually showing us her unfathomable greatness, and thus assuring us of a growing joy as she manifests herself to us. She offers us the reward of enabling us to see that the horizon of the pathway we are on is always enlarging and bears the promise of infinity. Simplicity and wonder go hand in hand. With showy things that clamor for our attention, there is no room for wonder, for they expose their entire contents on first glance. Their flashy outer garments use up all the space of our attention. Wonder resides in simple things. Because of her link with wonder, the strongest interior mainspring of the spiritual life, simplicity manifests herself as a most powerful stimulus to be followed in going beyond ourselves. Hence, if we allow ourselves to be swept up in this dynamism, we come to realize we are not being taken from the simple to the complicated. Rather, we are taken from the less simple to the more simple, in a process of continuous divestment that leads, O wonder of wonders, to a richness that is always greater, always less confining, and therefore always more fascinating. The wonder that arises within us seems to spring up suddenly, as if it came from nothing. Yet this happens precisely because wonder is born from familiar things that appear to be new because they come to reveal new aspects in a process of ever deepening and widening. And this process promises to be unending. Simplicity, in order to be grasped, requires of us a greater attention than that which is grandiose and complicated. She requires us to linger and to engage in a prolonged gazing. Simplicity does not reveal herself to the hurried glance. Simplicity certainly imposes a severe discipline. She does not allow us to look away or to be swept up in easy fascination of showy things. Indeed, in the deepening or widening we must not distance ourselves from the simple thing we first glimpsed. Otherwise, we will completely lose our way. Rather, we must continue to look at it with constancy and with growing curiosity, concentrating our gaze on the same point so as to reach the deeper spaces. Simplicity also imposes a kind of asceticism, but it is an asceticism that is joyful, happy, dynamic, and opens out to the spaces that are always becoming wider. It is an asceticism that is invigorating, filling the lungs with fresh air that empowers us to keep climbing towards the summit, where the space we will stand on might have become smaller, but the space before us, the panorama we view, will have opened out on the infinite. There is an inverse ratio between the richness that is reached through simple things and the instruments through which it is reached. The simplicity of great things must also be applied to the instruments with which we seek to reach it. The content and the container must be of the same quality. It is extremely important not to betray the simplicity of the contents by using showy means to present it. The means for reaching it must reflect, as in a mirror, the simplicity of the contents, which otherwise can be destroyed. The kingdom of God can be perceived through the smallest of all seeds and in the yeast that is barely noticeable. Simplicity seems to be second nature to the child, while oftentimes the adult fails to understand its richness and can only reach it by ways of a winding and complicated pathway. This seems to have been true for the famous writer C.S. Lewis, who tells of his journey in search of a joy which he had glimpsed in his childhood, but which had continued to elude him in its holiness, in its essentiality and simplicity, until one memorable day in his life. It was an evening in October while he was on a train going to London and was reading a book by George MacDonald. Suddenly, as Lewis tells it, for the first time the song of the sirens sounded like the voice of my mother or my nurse. It was as though the voice which had called to me from the world's end was now speaking at my side. It was with me in the room, or in my own body, or behind me. If it had once eluded me by its distance, it now eluded me by its proximity. Something too near to see, too plain to be understood, on this side of knowledge. It seemed to have been always with me. If I could have had turned my head quick enough, I should have seized it. Now, for the first time, I felt that it was out of reach, not because of something I could not do, but because of something I could not stop doing. Meanwhile, in this new region of all the confusions that had hitherto perplexed my search for joy were disarmed. For I now perceived that while the air of the new region made all my erotic and magical perversions of joy look like sordid trumpery, it had no such disenchantment power over the bread upon the table or the coals in the grate. I saw the common things drawn in to the bright shadow. It seems to me that the process Lewis seeks to describe is a passage of tortuous twists and turns that take him from a state of confusion and complication toward a simplicity that I would say is almost primitive: the mother, the nanny, the bread. Yet the simplicity he reaches is not a mere simplification of his earlier experiences, because simplification is a process that impoverishes. Rather, what Lewis is speaking of is an internal transformation involving the whole person and enabling him to see the bright shadow coming out of the book into the real world and resting there, transforming all common things and yet itself unchanged, or more accurately, he saw the common things drawn into the bright shadow. Differing from simplification, which acts to reduce a thing, simplicity is a way of being new. Simplicity realigns a person's perspective so that he or she can only be satisfied with the precious pearl. And it is here that we find the link between wisdom and her sister, holy simplicity. E. Robinson says that in the child, simplicity presents a particular aspect, that of being holistic. Holistic simplicity. In such all-inclusiveness, Robinson detects a characteristic of the young child's way of thinking which he finds difficult to describe. In my own attempt to interpret what Robinson says, I would say that the simplicity of the child draws him or her to the heart of the matter, and thus to the whole, where nothing is left out. Yet the child is capable of perceiving the whole while focusing on very small and precious things, like the mustard seed or the yeast. The young child is capable of seeing the whole gem while fixing his attention only on the apex of the diamond. For Lewis, the journey had been long, winding, discouraging, and hindered by false sirens, while the goal over which he had agonized and which he finally reached was simplicity. The mother tongue, the smell of the bread, common things. Yet these common things were illuminated by a light that made their contents visible. Such a meandering and difficult journey is perhaps somewhat inevitable for the adult who is removed from original simplicity, that simplicity in which the child finds himself or herself so at home, knowing how to draw so readily from its richness and causing us to think that simplicity and the child are made for one another. The gospel says, "Unless you become like children, you will not enter the kingdom of heaven." While for the adult, simplicity is a conquest that is often labor-intensive and requires a long journey, in the child, it seems to be a phenomenon that could be likened to a natural spring. The child lives simplicity with spontaneity and naturalness, as a fish swims along quite naturally in deep waters and from time to time shows us those depths. Even though their ways of living it differ, the child and the adult meet one another in simplicity, along with the queen of all the virtues, wisdom. Anna, thanks for joining us on the podcast again. I so appreciate you.
Oh, wow. Well, Carrie, thank you for inviting me to revisit and to discuss this article with you, this journal article. It is so rich that reading it in its entirety makes me just want to go back and maybe read a paragraph per day to fully sit with her words. So, yeah, thank you for this opportunity.
Yeah, I would love to just hear your thoughts and just kind of think about this article with you a little bit deeper.
Well, of course, we know the gospel says, unless you become like children, you will not enter the kingdom of heaven. And Sophia reminds us of this toward the end of the article.
Mm-hmm.
But we've considered these words many times, and we've asked ourselves, what does it mean to become as a child? And we know it means to go beyond the cuteness and innocence of childhood, and even our CGS mission statement reminds us of the charisms of childhood, joy and contemplation, and how they have meaning and purpose in our own lives.
Mm-hmm.
So kind of looking at that and thinking of a more of a big picture question, I'm wondering if any part of this article brought new insights for you as we seek to become as children.
Like you said, I really appreciated the time to be able to sit with this article and read it a few times and just kind of let it percolate in my heart. And there was a few things that really struck me. I know we talk a lot, we've talked before about how, you can find God in the everyday things. And practical life is such a great example of that, right? So the value of practical life in the atrium goes so far beyond even just the physical work that the child is doing, but the fact that you can actually find God in the flower arranging, the hand washing, the spooning of the beans, the dusting, the polishing. And C.S. Lewis really, the quotes that she had from him, and, the mother's voice and the nurse and the making of the bread, it's in the everyday simple things that God exists. Like sometimes I think we're waiting for, the big boom, the big loud voice, and he's in the soft wind, right? So I think this article really called out for me again to refine my gaze to be more like the child's, where I can see God in the everyday things and to be content with them, like to not glaze over them, to allow my gaze to linger on those everyday things so that I actually can have that wonder, can have that simplicity that draws me towards like a magnet, right? And I loved that she also said in the article, it's when we lose the simple things, we can lose the ability to have wonder over them, to be drawn towards them, right? So I was imagining like children at an amusement park, it fills them with joy, yes, but it doesn't fill them with wonder. It doesn't draw them into relationship the same way a flower would, right? So like just the value of the simple, the value of a single thing, a value of rich food, but little of it. I just feel like this article, again, really reiterated that for us.
Well, Carrie, just what you were just saying reminded me of this idea that, especially with the youngest children, when we're talking about the first plane child, much of what we give the children at this age is so formational. It is formational in forming their very being.
Yeah.
And is not something that they will later possibly be able to even recall cognitively.
Right.
And of course, Montessori wrote about this as well. It's when older children or even adults will encounter something in life, or maybe even something academically, and just think, how do I know this? How do I know this? And cannot bring up the exact memory. And then when we read about the ex-bambini who returned to Sofia's atria, Sofia and Gianna, and talked to them about, what are your memories? What are your early memories of the atrium? And they were able to say that they remembered the feeling. They remember how Sofia and Gianna and the other catechists made them feel. Did they remember the specifics of a particular presentation? Often not. And so even when we're working with our level 1 children, sometimes I think it takes a certain humility to think they may not remember a single thing that we're doing. But at the same time, we know we are forming the person.
It's really an interesting concept because it's a completely different way of looking at catechesis, where our goal is not to pour all of this head knowledge into the person that then they can regurgitate and, have correct answers on a test or be able to know all the things, but almost a catechesis of, well, we say relationship, but in this context, a felt reality, an emotion that they are going to wrap around the concept of God, their relationship with God, their relationship with the church, and all of these different themes that we lift up. An emotional reality that wraps around those things, like that being our goal, that being our environment that we're creating to foster that. It's a completely different mentality. It's a completely different way of thinking about what our catechesis is. And at the end of this article, she talks about how as adults, it becomes a difficult journey for us to remove from original simplicity, right? So
right.
It's harder for us the older we get to live in this natural state of simplicity that the 0 to 6-year-old so easily lives in.
Like a fish in water is the metaphor she gives us.
Yes. And so even I would say the second plane child has more difficulty with that, especially if the second plane child did not have a time in the first plane where it was fostered. It would be harder for them in the second plane, but not impossible. And I love that she also doesn't talk about how, well, it's done. That
right.
It's impossible for you. It's just harder. It's just harder.
Right.
Just like learning another language is harder.
Right. The absorbent mind is being replaced, and it's no longer a natural process.
Mm-hmm. Possible, just harder.
Yes. Yeah. Yes. I love that. I was drawn to a passage early in the article. Simplicity and wonder go hand in hand. And you referenced this, Carrie. With showy things that clamor for our attention, there is no room for wonder, for they expose their entire contents at first glance. Their flashy outer garments use up all the space of our attention.
Mm.
And then she goes on to say, wonder resides in simple things. And so for the listeners out there who maybe don't have the article in front of them, and I invite you to go back and find it in the journal and read it as well, and really savor it as we talked about. She says, wonder resides in simple things. Sophia chooses in written form to make this brief sentence the entire paragraph. And so I was wondering, did she do this for emphasis, for essentiality, or for simplicity? What are your thoughts on that? Wonder resides in simple things.
Yeah, that's one of the lines that I highlighted as well. Wonder resides in simple things. I wonder why she did that. I was thinking it was emphasis, but I like your perspective that it could have been for essentiality and simplicity's sake. And I think that really hones the point, though, that by having this paragraph that literally has 5 words in it, the simplicity of that allows our eyes to gaze and linger on it. And she could have emphasized what she was saying there with a few more sentences, but in doing that, we would have probably glazed over the point more so than it being just 5 words. So in doing that, making it so simple, I think she is also, honing that point that she has, that simplicity draws us into wonder. Mm-hmm. And God, such a discipline for us as adults, right? Because with all the love in our hearts, we want to gift, and not just children, everybody, the beauty that is our faith, is God, is the scriptures, is the liturgy. God, there's so much beauty. There's such an abundance of beauty that we want to give, right? But in losing that simplicity, what does she say in that paragraph you just read? We've lost
space of our attention. We use it all up. We're done.
Yeah. So it takes a self-discipline for us to count our words, to count our everything.
I'm reminded of Gianna Gobi's words too, to count our words and to make our words count.
But even beyond like presentations, the amount of things you have in the atrium, the amount of things you have in your life, the things that take up your time, the things you choose to pay attention to, like all of it can get so busy, right? All of it can clamor for our attention. And by simplifying all of it, we are allowing ourselves to grow in our ability to wonder and let our gaze linger, almost drawing us to the heart of things by creating a more simplicity. That's what I hear Sophia talking about, even beyond the atrium. Maybe that's just what I needed to hear right now in my life.
Right. You mentioned C.S. Lewis.
Yeah.
And then Sophia describes C.S. Lewis's conversion experience. She describes it, it's very well documented. She describes it as a journey in search of a joy. And of course, she's drawing on one of his major works. But here we have the story of a person often described as Oxford's greatest mind. Sophia says, quoting her, "It seems to me that the process Lewis seeks to describe is a passage of tortuous twist and turns that take him from a state of confusion and complication toward a simplicity that I would say is almost primitive." Once again, the mother, the nanny, the bread. And yet that simplicity he reaches is not a mere simplification. So she's talking about the differences in simplicity and simplification of his earlier experiences, because simplification is a process that impoverishes. So that looking at the difference in those two very similar words and how one leads to richness and one leads to poverty. So here we have, arguably one of the greatest minds that the world has known, finding answers in meaning and simplicity.
I love the way that he referred to that the simplicity he found was the simplicity he had in childhood.
Right.
Yeah, I think the difference between simplicity and simplification is something that we're definitely going to need to ponder. That will take some time to sit and ponder.
So I think you've touched upon this earlier, Carrie, as catechist. For those of us who have really fallen in love with the work, we've gone to countless formation courses. Many of us have given courses, read all the books, read all the related books, read all the Montessori text, and so we just keep going deeper and deeper and deeper and deeper into building our understanding and even our knowledge of this work. But there seems to exist some sort of paradox here in that the more we know, the less we say.
Which, oh God, like that's huge. And I think that is the marker of a healthy person. Because sometimes our motivations for pouring out might be more selfish. A approving of self, a approving of my worth, approving of my knowledge. And an adult or any person that is capable of having great knowledge, but still counting their words, is a sign of a healthy adult.
And when you say selfish, I'm not hearing you say selfish in a negative or derisive way. I'm hearing you say it in a way of, I have this and I am sharing it with you. And it often, like you mentioned earlier, is coming from a place of joy. It's coming from an enthusiastic place of a sometimes even with a evangelistic zeal, of I have this and I must share it with you. I must tell you about this.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. And as we grow in this process and go even deeper and even deeper into our relationship with God, the goal, or maybe not the goal, but one step in the journey would be when we can come to a place where we present the mystery without needing to answer it. So being able to present the rich food but little of it, and being okay with the questions without answers, being okay with the little pieces, the little nuggets, the simplicity without needing to give the whole thing, pour out all the knowledge. As we grow deeper and deeper in our own relationship with God, our own faith, our own understanding of self, we should be able to move closer and closer towards this simplicity. It's big work. It is. Yeah.
And it is countercultural in so many ways, because we do want to have a purpose and objective, and to be able to know that we've met that task, and to tie it up with a bow. And I'm thinking about working with children, and how do we know this was an effective lesson or presentation, rather than just letting it percolate, letting it marinate, and so forth.
Yeah. That makes me think about what Sophia always talks about the method matching the content, So
yes,
for the method to match that mystery. So the method being one of open-ended contemplation, wonder, that draws us deeper and deeper into relationship with, meets the content that is his mysterious self and everything that comes with him.
And in this article, I'm scanning it real quick to find here it is. It's on the first page. The simplicity of great things must also be applied to the instruments with which we seek to reach it. The content and the container must be the same quality. It is extremely important not to betray the simplicity of the contents by using showy means to present it. The means for reaching it must reflect, as in a mirror, the simplicity of the contents, which otherwise can be destroyed.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a paragraph right there that you were saying at the beginning. You could just sit and ponder that one paragraph.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
And so that, I think she is hinting at some of the same ideas that you were just talking about the method matching the content. Yeah,
I agree. And that we have to be very careful when we don't do that by using showy means of presenting this content. So I mean, there's a lot that can be sat within that, because I think many of us were raised with catechesis that I probably could fall under this showy means that doesn't match the content. And so it's worth sitting and pondering and kind of doing some self-evaluation of. So it's a great article. So much here that we can sit and ponder with. I'm going to put a link in our show notes for people to be able to access it via PDF, and then they can read it online or print it so they can read it, because it's such a good article.
Rather than trying to search through all the journals to find it.
You can go back if you've got them all, or the compilation books that have all the journals, 2003, you can find it there too. So yes. Well, thank you, Anna. I really appreciate you taking the time to sit with this article with me. It's just such a beautiful piece that Sophia has gifted us with, and I appreciate you journeying with me with it.
Well, thank you for inviting me, and we'll talk soon.
We'll talk soon. Thanks, Anna. Thank you all for listening to this week's episode of the Good Shepherd and the Child podcast. In our show notes, you will find a link to be able to read online a copy of the article Holy Simplicity from the 2003 journal. I'm also putting a link for you to be able to purchase from our CGSUSA store the compilation journal that includes the 2003 journal in it. CGSUSA would like to thank all of our members and our donors who have given to the 2005-2026 annual appeal and the Tina Lillich Memorial Fund. Your donations make it possible for CGS to expand formation opportunities, give mission courses, invest in technology, create catechist and parent resources and publications, and offer many, many wonderful events that build our catechist community. All of these initiatives help us serve children with love and generosity. The revenue that is generated from membership fees covers about 55% of the cost of the benefits of membership. So philanthropy is essential to delivering excellent support to our catechist, parents, ministry leaders, families, and children. If you would like to find out more about how to make a gift, please go to cgsusa.org/donate. Thank you all for your support. This podcast is sponsored by the United States Association of the Catechesis of the Good Shepherd. If you would like to know more about the Catechesis of the Good Shepherd, or if you would like to become a member, please go to cgsusa.org. Thank you all for listening. We will see you in 2 weeks. Go and fall more deeply in love with God.